When we produce a lot of cortisol, it is a sign to our body to hold on to every calorie you can get your hands on for your dear life.
Hi, I'm Glennis Woods Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe. I cannot tell you how many times I have spoken to women about this whole metabolism issue. I mean, it's a thing. It's no longer something that we whisper about in the dark. Everybody's talking about it, not just women, but men too, because their wives or their significant others or their friends are talking about this mysterious weight gain that seems to come right around menopause. And it's interesting because I'm one of those late bloomers. I started menopause at 51, but I had hardly any side effects. After it was all over, then I gained weight. I was just like out of nowhere at 64, and 3 years later, I'm like, what the heck happened? It's just so interesting. There's so many different trains of thought out there as to why these kinds of things are happening to women as they age. So we're going to talk about it. We have with us Dr. Jessie Hehmeyer, who is the physician founder of Well Empowerment, where she practices data-driven, heart-centered functional medicine. And I love that piece about heart-centered functional medicine. Dr. Hehmeyer, thank you so much for being on the V.I.B.E Living podcast. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Linus. It's such a pleasure to be here with you and your community.
Well, thank you. When you say heart-centered, I think I understand what that means, but I do not want to speak for you. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, let's just step back and talk about oftentimes what people are looking for in the area of their health. They're looking for answers, right? They're looking to understand what is at the source of their symptoms or health conundrums, like what they're dealing with. And that's super important. That's the data driven part. But one of the things I've come to realize over the course of a couple of decades and then some of guiding people in this area of their life is if we are not deeply connected to our unique why our health is so important to us, then the what is almost useless. Maybe not totally useless, but somewhat useless. At least it's certainly not as powerful as it would be otherwise. So when I speak to heart-centered, I mean that when I partner with people, we get very clear on your why. The what is what you envision and desire and are committed to for your health in your life. But for all of us, that what, like the number on the scale, for example, yes, totally got it. That's something most of us care about. But we care about it because when our weight is just handled, there's a way that we can move about life that we can't otherwise, right? There's a way we relate to ourselves that shifts. There's a way we interact with the world. There's the peace of mind of knowing you're voting for your health and longevity in a meaningful way, right? So those are examples of the whys that someone might arrive at when they start to look at, why do I even care about my weight to begin with, right? And so deeply tapping in and getting clear on your unique why is, as important as are the numbers. And so when I work with people, we bring them both to the conversation. We bring in the science, we bring in the data, but we also get deeply connected to what we say our life is for, because that's really the heart of it all.
I love that. And that is so true. And, I think a lot of times women don't give themselves the opportunity or create the opportunity to really peel back the layers to figure out what's motivating them,
Yeah.
why they are feeling the way. Why is it so important, like for in my case, for me to lose these 10 unwanted pounds? And I can tell you right now, my motivation was that it just didn't feel comfortable. I was a dancer for many years and I was always underweight. In fact, I used to do things like double my pants and stuff my bra, which is kind of like, and I remember people saying, one day you're gonna wonder why were you so upset about being so skinny. So the one day is here. So I was always underweight. So beginning to get to a point where now I have more of a woman's body instead of a little girl's body, that took some adjustment, you know. And I said, well, why do I really want to lose all this weight? And I got right down to it wasn't so much what I looked like, it was what my health was like. I wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything else going on with me, but also I just didn't feel comfortable in my body. And I
Mm.
think a lot of times midlife women kind of approach that part where they're just not feeling comfortable. Could you give us an example of some of the women that you've worked with and kind of what their why was when it came to the whole idea of maybe reducing their size or losing weight?
Yeah. So I love what you shared, Linus. And I would say that certainly resonates with a lot of women who I work with, right? Mostly the people who I work with are very clear that they are not looking to become a swimsuit model, right?
Right.
And in fact, I would say all because it's simply just not wouldn't be who I would work with, right? We wouldn't be a good match for each other. They'd be looking for someone else. But really, why people start to dig in and really get committed to draw a line in the sand and step into a new era where their weight is handled, right? Like it's ease and outcomes for them is given by the fact that yes, it interferes with their capacity to be fully present with others, right? Because their mind is on how they feel in their body. They don't like the way they feel in their body, right? Or for some people, it is about, I don't like what I see in the mirror. And for a lot of people, it's a little bit of both, right? It's this sense that, I don't like how people don't, are saying they don't like how it feels in their body. And also they don't love the way it looks when they look in the mirror, right? It's a mismatch with how they're committed to showing up in the world. There's also another aspect I would say that people start to discover is, if we are to say that honoring our health as sacred is really important to us, and while maybe most people have never used that exact language, I think for those of you listening, if you just kind of reflect on that, is honoring my health as sacred important to me? I would suspect all of your listeners are currently out loud saying yes. Right. Right.
Absolutely.
And so, with zero judgment, we're all human. But if we start to just take that declaration, honoring my health as sacred is important to me. And if we're looking at how we've been acting and we see a mismatch, right? A mismatch with what we say and a mismatch with the actions we're taking. And again, zero judgment. This is not good or bad, right or wrong. This is humanity. And we start to see this, we can start to get clear that part of this journey is really about self honor, right? Like, taking our words seriously and not betraying ourselves, right? If we
Mm,
say honoring our health as sacred like that is something that we hold near and dear, yet we continually are not mindful of how much we're drinking or whether we're getting sufficient sleep or, how we're fueling our body, that there's just no integrity in that statement. We know that on like a cellular level, right? It's going to be taking up headspace, running in the background. And what's more common, given the world we were born into, is that turns into shame, right? It
mm,
turns into shame and it turns into self aggression. And that self aggression is commonly expressed as overindulgence or deprivation, overindulgence
mm.
or deprivation. So it's, kind of looking yourself in the mirror and saying, you screwed up already. So you might as well have the pint of ice cream, right? Kind
Yes.
of like
Right,
that's,
right, right. All that
right?
negative self-talk. Yes, yes.
Yes. And then
Hmm.
on the flip side, it could show up as you've been so quote unquote bad, right? You're not eating you're not having a drink for the next month and you're not touching anything but, fill in the blank, right? Another form of self-aggression, right? Overindulgence or deprivation. They are both two sides of that same coin. So when people start to see like the different layers of this, it
Mhm.
it it gets shifted, right? It gets shifted to more of a carrot dangling experience over time. What am I going towards? Well, I'm going towards a future where I have ease and outcomes. I'm going towards a future where I'm able to show up as my best self for myself and others. And, with that as the carrot dangling, it becomes a gentle journey, right? It becomes a journey of self love. It
Not quite
becomes,
right, not quite so abrasive, because we
yes,
can be abrasive with ourselves. We can, talk really mean to ourselves, but not talk that way to anyone else, but can be so hard on ourselves. And there's so many myths that are out there right now about, and the internet can be great, but it can also just be horrible in terms of passing on information that's not quite right. What are some of the myths that you want to dispel when it comes to metabolism and women over 40?
yeah, awesome. So we'll start to turn our attention towards the science, right? The data behind it. So what we'll look at are commonly overlooked reasons, right? Actual physiological reasons why people are struggling to lose weight that are just missed, by and large. I will say, as a little bit of a prelude to this, that I know a lot of people will say, I know thyroid, 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 right? And certainly we want to make sure your thyroid is working optimally, which is different than lab normal. But I will say your thyroid is actually not on this list, right? It's not on the list of commonly overlooked reasons, even though it is often overlooked. And the reason it's not on this list is because I've not yet encountered an individual who, let's say we discover their thyroid is either, suboptimally working, it's not working as well as we'd like it, or they're actually clinically hypothyroid, right? Like they do need some thyroid medication of sorts. They didn't know it before. I've not yet encountered someone where that's the only key to the
Mm-hmm.
metabolism kingdom, so to speak, right? So that's why it's not on this list. So for those of you listening out there, yes, you want your thyroid thoroughly assessed. And by thoroughly, I look at least 5 different metrics of thyroid health when I test people's thyroid function. So commonly it's just one, TSH, but we really want to expand and get a holistic view of how your thyroid is functioning. So now that we've covered the thyroid, we'll turn to, overlooked reasons. And the number one, well, not the number one as in this is the number one reason. It is just the first one on the list. These all happen with equal frequency, I'd really say. The first one we're going to speak to is inflammation. So when
Mm-hmm.
inflammation is elevated, it is actually going to put your body into energy conservation mode, also known as fat storage mode. And I think it's helpful to understand from an evolutionary standpoint why our body would do this, right? And our body would do this because inflammation plays an important role in healing. That means if you're injured or you're sick, your body should have an elevated amount of inflammation. It should be producing those chemicals that engage your immune system and ultimately create this thing that collectively we call inflammation. But that inflammation is supposed to be short term. In other words, when you're healed from the injury or when you're healed from the illness, that inflammation should go back down to low normal levels. So the problem really happens when inflammation is elevated over the long term. But to go back and speak to why would our body do that? Why would we produce increase, why would inflammation go up when we're injured or sick? And why would our metabolism go down? Well, if you go back a few hundred years or a
Mm-hmm.
few thousand years, it would have been a real problem to be injured out there in the forest when you're gathering food or you're hunting and there's no one around to help you. There's no one around to get you your food, right? So your body says, okay, for this time period, I'm going to call in the helpers via this inflammatory message to heal the body. And we're going to keep this person alive by slowing their metabolism because they're not going to be able to get food for a second.
Ah,
Right. So it's absolutely, brilliant, but we live in a different era. Right. And so again, the real problem isn't when someone is injured, unless it's a chronic injury or, has a short-term infection. The real problem is when this inflammation is elevated for a long term over time and your metabolism as a result is slowed down. And so if this sounds like something, for you listeners, you're like, ugh, could this be me? You want to make sure you just simply get your inflammatory markers tested. There are many you could get. Two that I look at commonly are HSCRP and homocysteine. HSCRP and homocysteine. If HSCRP, high sensitivity C-reactive protein, if it's above 2.5, maybe even 2, I'm going to start thinking about it as something that is slowing your metabolism. Homocysteine, I like to see it between 6 and 8. If it's above 8, it's something that could be slowing your metabolism. Below 6, that's something else, but above 8 in particular, I'm going to be thinking about the impact on your metabolism. So there we have, number one, that inflammation interfering with our metabolism. Number two, we have decreased insulin sensitivity.
yes.
Which this is a tricky one because how we know this is true to someone have decreased insulin sensitivity is by their labs. And the reason this is tricky is that lab normal for fasting insulin is like 18. Some labs will even go up as high as 20 or 22, but I want to see it under 8. That's a
Mm.
huge difference, huge difference. And if you're up over 8, that is already the alarms going off that your body is struggling to get the message of insulin. And when it struggles to get the message of insulin, guess what your body does? It produces more insulin. It's
Mm.
like our volume, right? If you feel like someone's not listening, you might speak a little louder. If you feel like
Mhm,
they can't
mhm.
hear you, you're going to speak a little louder. Same thing with our body. It's just going to produce more insulin. Insulin does many important things, but when we're producing more and more, one of the things it does is puts our body into energy conservation, puts our body into that fat storage mode. So again, that insulin, fasting insulin is an easy thing to test and know if that's at play for you. Number 3 is what I like to call detox pathways gunked up. Fancy term, right? But the detoxification, right? We talk about detoxification in a kind of, casual way these days. And I always think, I'm like, oh, if you just create a supplement and put the word detox on it, I mean, it's just going to sell. Everybody loves a good
Right.
detox supplement, right?
It is the new buzz. It is the new buzz right now. Yes.
Right,
Detoxification. Yep.
truly, truly. And like sometimes people aren't really sure what they're detoxing from, but they're like, I think I should detox from something, right?
Mhm.
And the thing is like, okay, if we think about detoxification, it's supposed to take molecules that could do harm, things that can do harm to our body and help our body get rid of them. That's fundamentally what detoxification is about. And how it does that is it processes it through these different phases. There are actually 3 phases of detoxification. And so from start to finish, what we're doing is we're taking these things that can damage our body and we're turning them into things that are water soluble. They start out fat soluble, we turn them into water soluble. Why is that? So that we can get them out of our body. We
Right.
cannot get fat soluble things out of our body, but water soluble, we get rid of through our urine, through our sweat, through our bowel movements, through our breath, primarily from our urine and our bowel movements. So there are a lot of different ways we can determine if we think this is a problem for someone. But for those of you listening, just kind of one way you could look is, are you having regular bowel movements? Are you having daily bowel movements? There's a great saying, I didn't make it up, I wish I did, but it is great. And it's, we're not just what we eat, we're what we don't excrete. We're not just what we eat,
Mm.
we're what we don't excrete. So, for those of you who are not having daily bowel movements, you're reabsorbing those toxins. For those of you who are maybe just a little bit lower on that water, right? Maybe you get 2 glasses a day, but like you're kind of like a camel, right? We need to increase that water. Just simply put, help your body let those toxins exit. Help your body exit, show those toxins the exit door. So those are some ways you can start to support your body, is making sure you're having daily bowel movements. That's a whole other conversation. But that's a little red flag. There are other tests I'll do looking at some of the nutrients that are important for detoxification, like B12 and protein and antioxidants that play an important role in those different phases. But just out of the gate, those are some ideas about how you can help your body move toxins through, and also signs that you might need a little detox support in some way, shape, or form. Number 4 is nutrient deficiencies and insufficiencies. And a lot of these are related, but these nutrient deficiencies and insufficiencies, I'm thinking about when it comes to metabolism, I'm thinking about B12, I'm thinking about magnesium, I'm thinking about omega-3 fatty acids and CoQ10 and vitamin D, right? These are some of the nutrients that are really important to support our metabolic health. So again, these are numbers you can get. You can have these labs run. I am, as much as I'm heart-based, I am data-based. So we want to use your specific numbers to guide our path forward. And then number 5, the 5th one on this list, is increased stress. Now, increased stress is more than just an experience, right? Experience, we can all kind of think about increased stress and imagine a time or a moment, or maybe even right now, when you feel stressed out, right? You've got a lot on your plate. But stress is more than just that emotional or psychological feeling. That's for sure. Those are for sure ways to know you're stressed out. But there can be physiological stressors. And what's at the source of that is when we are stressed, whether it's physiologically or emotionally, we're going to be producing a lot of cortisol. Cortisol is our primary stress hormone. And when we produce a lot of cortisol, it is a sign to our body to hold on to every calorie you can get your hands on for your dear life, right? So increased cortisol is going to slow down our metabolism as well. And again, these 5 different areas, whether it's inflammation or compromised insulin sensitivity or detox pathways gunked up or nutrient insufficiencies or that cortisol, the high cortisol stress, increased stressors, they're related, right? Oftentimes it's very rare that it's just one of these. But really, if you're someone who, like Linus, is like, what the heck is going on? What is going on with my body, right? There is an underlying reason. And so, these are things that are knowable and can be discovered.
You're absolutely right. And all those things I am familiar with. And people are listening to this and they're saying, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Oh, yes, I've heard about that before. But here's the other question. Sometimes all this information, as constructive as it is, can be overwhelming. In fact, a lot of the times it's that sense of overwhelm. Not only does it raise our cortisol levels, but it's that sense of overwhelm that keeps us from being inspired and motivated to do that one life incremental change or that one thing we need to do to get started. So, what would you suggest? Where does one start on this journey of beginning to shed these unwanted pounds and inches? What's the first
Yeah.
thing they should do?
So I believe the first thing they should do is author their vision of vitality. And their vision of vitality, your vision of vitality, is a self-authored what and why about your health, right? It is actually that heart-centered work. And so for those of you listening, when I work with people, I guide them throughout the whole process. Today, I'm just going to invite you to engage in the first of 3 steps. And it's really, really powerful. So where I would invite you to begin is by time traveling to the 5-year future. So stepping into the 5-year future. So 5 years from now, I will be 53. And so you want to stand in whatever that 5-year future is for you. And I'd like you to tell the story. And I do mean like with pen and paper or fingers and keyboard, like actually do this. Don't just think it in your head. I'd like you to tell the story of what it is to be you in this 5-year future thriving. So tell the story in first person present tense, right? It might be something like, I'm 53 and my body is strong and beautiful and resilient. I move about the world with grace and ease and connect with others wholeheartedly, right? Whatever is your truth, you want to write that down and really give yourself a few minutes to daydream and envision and stand in this 5-year future you intend. That is the beginning of getting connected to your what and your why. Now,
Yes. Mhm.
yeah. Now, from there, the next question I would invite each of you to ponder is, what is one action you could take today that would move you just a little bit towards that 5-year future? Just a little bit, right? We're not looking for heroism here, right? We're not looking for anything heroic. We're looking at, okay, if for you, alcohol is a source of struggle, right? You can see that how you're using alcohol is interfering with that 5-year future. You might just begin by counting the number of drinks you're having in a week, just for yourself. This is your sacred journey. You get to share it with whoever you want, but beginning the practice of being kind and honest, right? Actually looking at, what actions am I taking that are a match for this future I intend? And what actions am I taking that are going to interfere with my capacity to live this future? Right. So perhaps that's it for some of you. For others, it might be around movement. Maybe you're not moving or exercising. And maybe for you, it would just start by, I'm going to walk around the block once a
Mhm.
day, right? And for someone else, it might be, no, I'm well beyond that. I really have this area pretty well handled. I just see that I could get more strength training in. Okay, great. The really important thing about this is really to start where you are and honor your truth. And that's one of the things when I work with people one-on-one, right? We are taking a customized approach, right? So as to be both effective, and part of that effectiveness means that we're not overwhelming you on your journey. We're I think about this like crossing the monkey bars of change.
Right,
And so
exactly.
it's like, okay, only you know how long your arm is, but
Mhm.
I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you stretch in a way that is useful, right? Stretch and reach the bar that's maybe just a little bit further, but I'm also not going to ask you to go across the entire monkey bars in one day or one week or one month, because that doesn't turn out well, right? So we want to really honor the truth of change. And also part of this is developing the capacity for resilience, right? If you're crossing the monkey bars, guess what? You're going to fall off,
Mhm.
right? And so if you're going to fall off the monkey bars, what we want to help you develop is the ability to get right back on the monkey bars and to see what was at the source of the fall. So in the future, when you fall again, it's not for the same reason, it's for a
Right.
different reason.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because many times our failures happen to teach us something so that we can succeed at the end of all of this. And many times, when we fall off the bicycle or we, kind of backslide on the commitments or the goals or intentions that we've set, many times it's because there's something else that we're supposed to learn from that. I mean, failure is a very important, I don't even like to call it failure. These little setbacks are very important when it comes to our overall success along the wellness journey. And when you think about that, it does take resilience. But I know you talk about the idea of, gosh, if there was one superpower that everyone could have to help them to be triumphant and to be sustainable in their weight loss mastery, what would that superpower be? What would you like it to be?
It would be the capacity to be kind and honest. It would
I
be the
love
capacity.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Bringing them both to the moment, right? Mostly people are really good at one or the other, right? And sometimes it usually changes over time, right? It can be honesty and then they're, beating themselves up. Look at how I failed, so to speak. And that I would even say, Linus, is not true honesty. Because if you're only looking at where you failed, you're ignoring all the places you're winning. Right. So it's not true honesty, but we could call it, say, okay, being honest. And then other people, right, see that they've had this habit of beating themselves up for so long and they're
Mhm.
unwilling to tolerate that anymore. So they just don't look, right? And that's what we call
Right.
being
Which,
kind,
right.
right? It's like,
Exactly.
yeah. But I promise it's something you can cultivate, right? You can develop the ability to be kind and honest, but it doesn't happen overnight, right? Mostly it takes some practice and some calling in of new wisdom or tapping into wisdom that's just like really buried deep within, and oftentimes a combination to move forward and be better and better at being kind and honest.
But that's one of the advantages I always say of growing older is that you really do have quite a bit of wisdom and life experience. And if you allow yourself to dig deep, the answers, really all the answers that you need to get to where you're going lie within you. But we live in a society that completely or consistently negates that. And like, you're not good enough, you don't know enough, you haven't done enough. But in reality, that famous saying, you really are enough. It's just about getting to the crux of it, tapping in and then buying into the fact that you really can achieve the intentions that you set, the goals that you are working on achieving. It's all possible. Tell me a little bit about your opinion with mindset. What does mindset come in with all of this?
Yeah, I would say it is an essential foundation of this work, right? And that is, when we work together, or even just the exercise you listeners just completed and beginning to author your vision of vitality, right? When we shift and begin to focus on where we intend to go, it is a foundational shift in mindset, right? As opposed to looking at how we failed in the past, really kind of thinking of ourselves. I always like to say, you are not a chair, right? When people say like, I can never, or start to speak about themselves like they are unchanging entities, right? Oh, I could never give up wine every night. I could never get more than 6 hours sleep. I could never, fill in the blank, whatever it is, right? That's what I call relating to yourself as a chair, right? A chair is going to be a chair.
Right.
And so, you are a human being. And so I'm not saying lie. I'm not saying, make up a new declaration that feels totally untrue, right? Oh, I don't like wine. Okay, whatever it is, right? If that doesn't feel true, you're not saying it's not going to change anything, but
Right.
opening the door, keeping the door open to say something like, I envision a future where being a no to wine every night is easier. Okay, well,
Mm.
if you actually envision that future, like that's true, right? Or, whatever it is for you. I envision a future where movement is a regular part of my weeks. Okay, great. Mhm.
And when you get to those points where you're actually doing the things that you have been envisioning, or the
Mhm.
intentions that you said you're actually beginning to accomplish them, there is something else I think that's really, really important. And that is to recognize it and to celebrate it. So many times we don't celebrate our accomplishments, no matter how small they are. We think that if we're going to celebrate, it has to be this big, big deal. Okay, I'll celebrate when I lose the 100 pounds, or I'll celebrate when, I'm feeling a lot better. But actually, the first step of making a decision that you're going to do something about your health is something to be celebrated. Because when you're celebrating yourself, you're kind of reinforcing the fact that you're actually going to do this. And I find that we women have a problem with that, with celebrating ourselves. We always feel like it has to be something huge and big. And the reality is, it really doesn't have to. And the other thing, too, is that celebrating yourself and your successes, maybe in some cases, the only ones that you know about, helps you to be more inner directed in terms of confirmation and not outer directed. That's something else that definitely our society supports, is that we get all the accolades from everybody else, and that's what helps us feel better. But the reality is, we want to learn how to feel better with just ourselves giving the accolades, because we know the truth. Okay. Everybody's saying, oh, you look fantastic, you look great. The truth is, I feel terrible. I'm tired. I didn't sleep last night. I know I didn't drink enough water. I'm really not doing that great. But on the outside, you're looking great. But part of being inner directed in terms of confirming yourself is, like you said, being honest with yourself, being kind with yourself, and then celebrating when you begin to move out of some of the things that you know you need to change. It has been so wonderful having you here, Dr. Do you like to be called Dr. Jesse or Dr. Hehmeyer?
So funny. Option three, Dr. H, but also you can call me Jessie.
Okay.
I'm not attached to titles. It's like,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
I should have asked before. I always like to ask that
all
because some people
good.
are really attached. So
If I get to be part of a conversation on elevating health, that's what I care about. You can call me Jessie. You can call me Dr. H, whatever comes out.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Jesse H, thank you
Cheers.
so much for being here on the Vibe Living podcast. It's been wonderful having you here. And for those of you who can see your show page or you can look at it later on, all of her links are there, how you can reach out to her, contact her for a consult, because I know you have a virtual practice as well, right?
Absolutely, I sure do. So if you're interested in scheduling a complimentary consultation, please do. And also make sure you let me know Linus sent you, because you would be gifted with 10% off if working together feels like a good fit. And then the other little thing I'd like to add is for those of you who love a good kind of like micro habit suggestion, if you go to wellempowered.com/dare, you will find you can register and receive a weekly dare. On Sundays, we send out our weekly dares, which are tiny little micro habits to practice for a week and just notice what shows up for you.
I love that. The weekly dare. That's fantastic. So, all of you, definitely, if you're listening to this podcast and you reach out to Dr. Jesse H, Dr. H, Jesse, if you reach out to her, let her know that the Vibe Living Podcast and Linus at the Vibe Living Podcast sent you. So, you can get that extra 10% if you decide to use any of her services. Thank you so much for being on the Vibe Living Podcast. It's been great having you here today.
Thank you so much, Linus. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. And thank you to all of you for listening. I know there's so many podcasts out there that you could be listening to. Thank you so much for making us the top 10% of podcasts globally. That means people are out there listening. Keep listening. Feel free to share this podcast and take a look at all the other wonderful shows, all designed to help you to vibe, to be more vibrant, more intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Have a fantastic day. And don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Vibe Living Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.